Hi, everyone. Welcome to another interview. We have a special guest today and a dear friend. Welcome, Kimberly Chiswell.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kimberly has a social work degree from the University of Sydney and has more than 20 years of experience as a counsellor and therapist, also in supervision and management. And she's an associate of the Centre of Response-Based Practice. So, Kimberly, can you talk to us a little bit? Give us an overview of your career. I mean, 20 years of experience. Tell us about that.
Yeah, look, I've started off working with young people who are on the streets and community members who were using drugs. That was the criteria for the service. Like, I don't want you to imagine people just using drugs. Like, these are just people,
Yeah.
that they were the funding criteria. And then worked with people coming out of prison and then worked as a counsellor for many years in different programs, youth and family counsellor. And then I focused my attention on violence, worked in the field of violence, which it's pretty hard to avoid. Violence is everywhere. I was working with as a counsellor, as a manager of a domestic violence and sexual assault crisis service. And then I worked in an organisation, an Aboriginal organisation where I was managing a counselling team, but also managing a family preservation and restoration program and suicide response service, supporting the development of and implementation of that service. And then I went into private practice, continued my supervision, teaching at several universities, nationally, internationally. That's probably about it. And yeah, just keep learning along the way, always learning.
So I've always been curious, how do you guys get called into critical situations? And obviously, I had talked to you about my home situation and being the daughter of a schizophrenic mum. And so out of the blue, social workers would show up and it would really throw us into more stress because we were going through a really tough situation. And then all of a sudden, you don't know this person, they're in your home, and you're like, well, how did they get here? So how do you guys
Mm.
get
Mm.
called in?
Yeah, so thank you for that because you've just reminded me that I'm really skeptical about my profession and critical about my profession, probably more accurately. Social workers, a lot of people want to become social because they want to help people, but I am more and more aware of how a lot of the work that social workers do can be harmful. So I guess the question, how would I get called in? Often a referral would be made from what's called the child protection system. So a neighbour might make a helpline report to the centralised number, and then the child protection service would investigate the report, and then with the intention of offering services to make things better. That's what they say is the intention. It could be a referral from the school, it could be a referral from the hospital. Often with children, the first port of call is the child protection hotline.
It's got to be tough because you're walking into different situations. You could even be in touch with people who are aggressive. So, how do you walk into those situations and try and put people at ease and more than anything, be able to receive the help instead of blocking it and
Yeah.
saying, I want you here?
No matter which household I walk into and which conversation I walk into, for me, I hold the position of people are doing the best they can with what they've got.
Mm.
And so I'm walking in going, I need to listen. And I've been schooled. I've been schooled by parents and, children about, how bullshit my approaches are, you know, because that's what I was taught in uni. And I've been, I've been under certain programs where the modality was to say certain things. And I've just learned to strip all that back and just come back to actually listen,
Mm.
listen. The
Yeah.
first thing someone says to you is often the key to what it was that they want you to know about them and their experiences and their world. You miss that because you're too busy talking about yourself and what your role is and how
Mm.
you're here to help. You're not helping. Do you know what I mean? So just get into their level, don't use power and authority, put your pen and paper away, and just be with, get to know. Consider people's post-traumatic amazingnesses. You know, if you look at them with an ounce of, we're always judging, right? We are always judging. But if you look at people with an ounce of paternalism, you've lost them. What an insult, right? What an insult for me to go into a house thinking that I know what I'm going to be able to do better in that household.
Oh, God, Kimberly. God, I wish you were the one that walked into my home.
Right?
It's so
Why
sad.
is that?
It's sad because I remember the first person the social worker that I had contact with, his name was Sean. And the day that we met, my mum was taken to Roselle Hospital. And it was a very violent way for her to be removed from our home. I mean, it was terrible. And so we followed in the car. And when we got to the hospital, obviously my mum was taken inside, and Dad and I waited only to be told, oh, you guys can't be here because it's too late. It was like 8 p.m. And so, yeah, there's no point in you being here. And I remember Sean sat next to me and he said, so how are you feeling? And I looked at him. I gave him a dirty look. And I said,
Yeah,
well, how do you expect me to be? And it just put me on edge. And so
100%.
that set the tone for every single time we had social workers come in. Am I wrong in saying, Kimberly, that what you try to do when you listen is to really be there for the person and connect with what is happening in their life, and as opposed to you're coming in, like you say, oh, well, this is my role. It is, am I,
Yeah, 100%, 100% humility
oh, yes.
and and I hate that question. How are you feeling? Never ask that question. I never, and in fact, I teach my students to never ask that question. And one, we're not really interested in how someone's feeling. But what are we going to do with that anyway? Like, someone tells us that they're feeling sad, and oh, are you feeling sad? Are you like, don't do that, right? Like, the other thing is feelings are weaponized against people. So when you say to someone, how are you feeling? Are you feeling anxious? You must be feeling pretty upset about the situation or whatever. So one, you're putting words in there. But two, then what we do as professionals is we take the feeling and we treat the feeling as a problem that needs to be addressed. So if you had responded in that way, Sean might have written in his notes something like, Sandra responded in a way that was resistant or aggressive or hostile, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so then you're treated as someone who is resistant, hostile, and aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And what I say to the people that I work with is wherever there is oppression, there is resistance. And so you've just been through a process of where your mum was forcibly taken out of, and you had you weren't able to be with her, which is a form of power over, institutional harm. And you're asked how you're feeling, like, and I find in those situations, I either go, if it's appropriate, just I might say, what's this like for you? Or how has this been for you? To get a broader description of, and to be ready for, this is really fucked. This is, here's my French, but, this is, to be with that,
Yeah, absolutely.
or just sit with the person
Yeah.
and just be with.
Mm.
Don't even inquire about how they're feeling because it's pretty darn obvious, you know? Like, what are you doing with that question? Is that just a question you were told to ask because you didn't know what else to say in these situations? Like our scope of micro skills and practice in my profession is quite limited. We have a few tricks in our bag, but they're not very sophisticated often. And
Mm.
I'm saying that because social workers who are watching this might be a bit ticked off at me about that, but I teach fourth year social work students across several universities. And it's scary how they all come out with the same rhetoric, but also knowing how paternalistic and how limited it is. My profession hasn't changed much since you were in that situation.